You see, I am not wearing black. But only because this was given to me in Milan, thank goodness. It's cold here. I have 4 layers of clothing.
4 layers, Norm. So how do you find Oslo so far?
Cold.
Cold, yeah.
I've been here, what, 12 hours?
Yeah. So, but you have had time to criticize the elevators at the hotel then?
Not the elevator, the control.
The control.
It's a destination control elevator. That's a really important new innovation. I've written about it in my book, Living with Complexity. It means that instead of having buttons inside the elevator to say what floor you want, outside you say, and then it assigns you to the correct elevator. So that if 4 people are going to 4 different floors, instead of having to go into one elevator and stop and stop and stop, each one gets a separate elevator. And it's really good, except this one, there's a big sign that says, put in the floor number. But there are no way to put in the floor number. They're just some words. So you have to know where everything is. Well, it turns out you have this secret key, wherever it is. This is the room key, and there's a piece of wood in it. And you're supposed to take the piece of wood and put it someplace, and that tells the elevator what floor you're going to. No. So I sat and I just watched while other people came in, and they pushed and did this and did that and did this. And eventually an elevator would come, and so they would rush into it. Of course, they didn't understand that they had no control over where it would go. So when I complained to the management, they couldn't understand. It's really easy to use, they said. They didn't watch. So that's one key of good design, which is to watch the people who are using it.
So Professor Don Norman used 15 minutes to explain this to the receptionist at the hotel. So this will not be a PowerPoint show or an interview on the stage, but it will be a dialogue with the audience. What you asked for. And that is very un-Norwegian, because people in Norway are quite scared of asking questions. But not this audience, of course. This is a different audience. But as you then understand, we need help. We need you to ask questions. But before we start with the questions, could you please give an introduction to the main topic of the conversation?
Yeah. I used to give lectures. I even used to use slides, but they were constraining. I couldn't change what I was saying. And so as I gave more and more lectures, I made the lecture shorter and shorter and had more room for questions, because I decided questions were really what people cared about. They could get their own questions asked and answered. And so at one point I said, well, no lecture, just questions, except I've written a new book, and most of you don't know anything about it, so you can't ask questions about it. So I have to give you a brief introduction. Well, you heard the introduction to me, which demonstrates I'm really old. And I've done lots of things in my life, and this is actually not my 15th book, it's my 21st book. And most of the early ones you don't know about because they were psychology books. But in design, most of my books have been about how to make things easier to use and easier to understand. And that's good, and that's useful. But you know, the world it's gone to hell. It's horrible. Lots of messes, lots of problems. And yeah, my books were nice and making better stuff, but it isn't solving the world's problems. So I said, what can I do to address the real issues of the world? And well, lots of people have written descriptions about the prejudices that we have, the wars that we have, the disagreements among people that we have, the way that the planet is suffering, because mainly the climate crisis is what we see, but there's more to it than that. We've polluted the oceans with plastics. We've polluted the land and air and sea with all sorts of horrible chemicals. And we're polluting the air in a way that's causing a rise in temperature that's going to change everybody's living styles on this planet. What could I say about that? Now, lots of people have described the issues. Lots of people have described the causes. And lots of people have written solutions. And they're all very sensible. But the more I thought about it, the more I said, look, for example, the United Nations has been holding a meeting every year for roughly 25 years to address the climate crisis. And they have these long seminars and these long lectures, and they all talk about the climate crisis. And then about 149 countries get together and sign a proclamation that they will take action against it. And now, 25 years later, what has occurred? What did they do? The answer is nothing. The problem is not our understanding. The problem is human nature. And so this new book, Designed for a Better World, which has to be meaningful, sustainable, and humanity-centered. Meaningful. We have to stop talking nonsense. We have to stop the economists from measuring everything, even things they cannot measure, and measuring it in terms of money, as if money was the most important commodity in the world. And they measure these things that they can't measure because, well, Lord Kelvin once said, if you can't measure something, it means you don't understand it. So they insist on measuring everything, and then they have wonderful mathematics. And you know what? They don't measure the right things, and they don't measure in the right way, and they do not understand people. Yet somehow they've convinced the politicians of the world to follow their economic arguments, even though they're continually wrong, always wrong. So that's one thing. Lord Kelvin didn't say that, by the way. He said that. But before he said that, he said, in the physical sciences, if you can't measure. Well, people are not in the physical sciences. We are in the biological or social sciences. And, you know, in the physical sciences, if I pick up something and drop it, I can predict exactly how fast it will fall and when it will hit. And if I do it again, it will do the same thing. And if I do it again, it will do the same thing. If I do that to a person or a cat, it won't do the same thing the next time. People are not physical objects because history matters to us. Our past determines how we are going to act. So that's point one. Point two, sustainability. Well, that's pretty obvious. We're ruining the world. And who is responsible? Designers. Who designs these beautiful objects? The wonderful thin cell phone, mobile, the wonderful thin computer, the wonderful refrigerator, the wonderful television set that lasts how long? You're supposed to change your computer and mobile every 2-3 years. And can you repair it? Well, no. Can you reuse the parts? Well, you can't really open it up very easily to get out to the parts and reuse them because we want to make them slim and beautiful. And what kind of materials do we use? Oh, well, we want these exotic materials because, well, that makes it strong and light and all that stuff. Well, in my book, The Design of Everyday Things, I was wrong. I wasn't wrong for what I said. I think what I said was correct, and we must still follow those. What I was wrong was what I didn't say. I didn't say that when we design, we have to think about what is called the externalities. Where did the materials come from to design this? How did we destroy the environment in mining the materials, and then in smelting it and making it into a form that we could use in manufacturing it? And then in the manufacturing, where we're putting out black smoke in the sky and dirty water. And then the fact that it can't be repaired or can't be reused. So throughout the undeveloped world, there are piles and piles of electronic junk burning because batteries, when they get old and deteriorate, get hot and they catch fire. Why did we do that? We must change that. And so that's the second lesson of the book. And then the third lesson is colonialism. The countries of Europe and the United States went around the world and discovered uninhabited lands. Well, there were people there, but that didn't count, right? And for example, to take a simple example, England. England went around the world and said, ooh, There are some people here, but you don't know how to govern yourself or how to live properly. So we will take over and show you how to do it properly. And were the people thankful? No. Does anybody like it when some external person comes in and tells you how you should live your life? No. But isn't that what we do as designers? We go and we send in the design researchers and the anthropologists, and we see how people are living, and we come back and we think about it, and we think about a new way of doing things, and we then give it to them and say, here's how you shall behave. Now this is all right when it's, say, an automobile or a cell phone. It's not all right when we're putting in a health system or an educational system or sanitation. It's not all right when we show people in their communities how to live. And so humanity-centered design says, not only must we consider all the impacts of what we're doing, explore the notion of human-centered to all of humanity, all living things, and the environment, but we should design from the communities, with the communities, not for them. We should not go in and say, here's what you must do. We must do what is called participatory design, which actually was developed first in Scandinavia, or co-design. I'm calling it a part of humanity-centered design. So that's what the book is about. Now, you're free to ask me anything you like about my past work, about this work. I consider this my most important book because it's about making a better world. But I'm here. Take advantage of it.
Who's got a question? Yes. One of you. I'll pick on you.
Thank you so much for your introduction. My values align a lot with your values, I can hear. My question is, for me it sounds like you're talking about responsibility. So how can we make people more responsible or think more responsibly about their actions and how we affect the world and each other?
Yes, so the first question is, okay, I pointed out all those issues, and in the book I point out the possible solutions to all the issues, but how come nobody has done anything? How come we still use fossil fuels to generate energy? And there are lots of reasons. So here's a good reason. The good reason is simply that you can't make a transition overnight. The kind of transitions, say, in the way that we get our energy, is going to take a decade or more, which is why it's important to start now and not wait, because it's going to take a long time. We need to have that as short as possible, so start as soon as possible. And, well, Norway is one of the leading oil-producing countries, but Norway understands this. However, do the people in power wish to give up their power, which is based upon the income from the fossil fuel burning and the fossil industries and the pharmaceutical industries and the existing industries? So that's the real problem. It's not a problem of understanding. We don't have to instruct people. We don't have to teach people anymore. They know about it. Or if they don't know about it, it's a deliberate lack of knowledge. Is smoking dangerous? Well, around the world, almost all cigarette packs have in great big letters, basically, don't smoke this, it will kill you. Does that stop people from smoking? No. So it's not education. We have to change the reward structure. And the reward structure is many things. In academics, it's publishing papers in refereed journals. And the more papers, the better. In academics, that means that if I do something that saves several thousand lives, people say, that's nice. If I write a paper and it's published in the journal Nature or maybe Science, I get promoted. The value systems in academics are all screwed up. Academics has made these very narrow specialties, where in a specialty you don't know what the people in your own department are doing because they're doing some other specialty. Yet in the world of practitioners, we have to cut across the specialties and bring them together, and we don't educate that way. Now, to solve the problems that we have today, we need people who are generalists who can cut across all the issues. How many of you are chief design officers of a large company?
Black T-shirt people, where are you?
Yeah, well, there may be 20 or 30 in the world. There are very few designers up at the top. Why? There are very few designers who are CEOs. In fact, I don't know of any designer who's a CEO of a large company. Why? One problem is, what is design? People think design is making things look pretty. And design is often taught in schools of art. Design is not art. They are very fundamentally different. Art is when artists express themselves, and they give their opinion of the world and so on, and they want to have an emotional response. That's good. I like good art. I learn from it. I buy it. I own it. But art is not design. Design is when you do something not for yourself, but you do it for other people. And we have great skills, and we have ways of approaching problems, of getting to the core of the problem, and we focus on people, except for industrial designers who focus on pretty cases. But we understand people, at least we should, and therefore it's designers who should lead us out of this problem. But why don't designers get promoted to companies where they can make a difference? Oh, we don't like business. We don't like our managers. Or we say, oh, our managers never understand what we're doing. And so I ask my designer friends, how do you explain this to your managers? We show them the beautiful objects we do. We show them the prizes we've won. We show them even letters from people saying how nice. Well, I was a business executive for a while, senior executive in at least 2 very large companies. And let me tell you, if somebody came to me and told me they did good work, here's what I would say. Yes, thank you. That's why we hired you. Now, excuse me, but I must get back to work. The other thing you cannot do is go to your bosses or your clients and say, you're doing things wrong. There are lots of problems. Clients and bosses do not want to hear about problems. And it's not because they want to be innocent. It's because that doesn't help them. You have to go to them and give them the solution. But it has to be a real solution that really works in the company, which means you have to understand how the company works. And guess what? You have to know how to use spreadsheets. You have to learn basic accounting. You have to learn about profits and losses and margins and things like that. You have to know the competitive world. You have to know about politics. Every big, important problem is a political problem, which is where it ought to be. When people have different opinions, it's the politician's job to try to figure out what is the best course of action. And of course, quite often, these different opinions are all legitimate. Each one is correct from the point of view of the person. And you have to find a course of action. So why aren't designers up there doing that? Well, you weren't trained to do that. Engineers are there. They weren't trained to do this either. They learned. They taught themselves, or they went out and got MBA degrees or whatever. So the first problem is it's your fault. Now, the answers are not simple. But we have to actually we don't try to convince people, we try to show them to their benefit. If we change the way we're manufacturing, will that cost money? Yes. If we go to what's called the circular economy, does that mean that I'm not going to sell a new product every 2 or 3 years because I made it to last longer? Yes. So how does the company stay in business? So you need that answer. You have to show them how, by not having waste, you're actually saving money, because waste is wasted money. It means there's material that you aren't using appropriately. And the same with the circular economy. Well, yes, you're not going to be selling so much. But what is a product? Every product is really not a product. Every product is really a service. Because look, here's my phone. And
you have arrived.
My intelligent phone. It's also very warm. It knows I was cold. But I don't buy the phone because of the phone. I buy the phone because of what experiences it delivers for me, the services it provides. A camera provides wonderful experiences of the past or of places far remote. Everything is really a service, and so why not switch to a service economy? And then services don't require new devices all the time. They just require continual, reliable experiences. And so that's what we have to do. There's another book written by an economist that I like, a behavioral economist, who came to my office one day and said, I just wrote a design book. And I couldn't understand why an economist would write a design book, but he was right. It was a book called Nudge. And the economist, Rich Thaler, and he had a lawyer partner writing it, said, the way to have people do good is simply make it easier to do the right thing and harder to do the wrong thing. Don't tell them what you're doing, just make it easier. Now, Rich Thaler won a Nobel Prize for the work he's been doing. And recently, at least 3 groups of economists have won Nobel Prizes for pointing out to the economists that they didn't understand people and showing the errors in their people. The first was Herb Simon. You may know his book, Sciences of the Artificial. He got a Nobel Prize in economics because Herb was in every field. He helped invent artificial intelligence. He was in psychology. He was in business. He was in economics. The economists thought it was a waste of the Nobel Prize. The second group, though, was from Danny and Amos, Danny Kahneman and Amos Tversky. They did a Nobel Prize for demonstrating that people really can't solve basic problems. People's thought processes are very different than what economists thought they were. And you may know Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. If you don't know it, I urge you to read it. Now, I've known their work. I've known them since they were graduate students, and since I was just a beginning assistant professor. And they have done wonderful work. And the last one was, as I said, the person who wrote Nudge. So that's my answer. And by the way, you now begin to understand that when you ask me a question, what happens is it releases all sorts of lectures in my head. Because when you give me a question, what I want to do is trigger that to give a larger context in which to understand why I'm answering the way I am.
Raise your hand if you have a question. I have one from Remy. We have a hand over there. I'll come to you next. From a speaker later today, Don. Remy, he'll be chatting a little bit in the afternoon. You got famous by coining the term user-centered design. Then you realized it was too narrow, so you moved to human-centered design. Now, you're expanding further and promoting human ITY, humanity design. Here we go. Can I guess what could the next evolution be? Earth-centered design?
I like to, look, I'm 87 years old, and I feel pretty young. And I do that in many ways. One of them is I teach students, young students, who are always trying to show that I'm wrong, and keeps me on my toes and keeps me young. And I try to learn from the students and try to understand what they are doing and how they are living. And when people show me that I'm wrong, I thank them. Because if I am wrong, damn it, I want to know about it, so I don't keep doing it. And if there's new things happening that I don't understand that I need to know about, I want to know about them. So I'm always learning. I try to learn a new topic every year. And so that's why my books keep changing. They keep enlarging the field that we're working in. And that's why this new book enlarges it even more, because I thought I was wrong in not paying attention to all of these issues. And what will the next book be about? Who knows? I never know what my book is going to be until I'm finished writing it. Because quite often when I start off, I know exactly what it's going to be, and when I finish, it's not at all what I said it was going to be, because I'm learning so much during the writing. So that's a question I can't answer.
So here's another question, I guess.
Yes. Hello. I'm here. You are talking very well about how to change the world, right? And about the circular economy. And my question is, how can we design waste? Because many times
sorry, I'm having trouble understanding you. Can we increase the volume or the gain? Or?
Okay. Is it better now?
Yes.
Yes. So the question was within the topic of changing the world and improving, designing, for example, a mobile phone that after 5 years will be thrown away and burned instead of being recycled. How can we design waste? And I think this is one problem that whenever we discuss in the group of friends or something, is never finding an answer of how can we design or recycle, right, what we produce. So how can we design good products, but once they're out of use, how can we recycle them and include that into the design thinking process?
Actually, knowing how to redesign is fairly simple. It's doing it may be hard because it does change a number of things that people are used to, but we have to use different materials. We have to not put aesthetics above practicality. So for example, it's very difficult with a modern cell phone often to get through the day on the battery. If the phone were just a couple of millimeters thicker, the battery could be larger and you would get through the day easily. Why haven't we made the phone a little bit thicker? Well, because we like slim. The people who write about phones don't like the edges. They want the touch screen to go all the way to the end of the phone. I can't answer my phone. Why? Because every time it rings and I pick it out of my pocket and I go to it, my fingers touch the screen, which almost always hangs up on the phone, on the call. So those are stupid things. So why do we design phones that way? But more importantly, why do we design them so they can't be repaired, so they can be upgraded continually with time, so you don't have to be replaced, so that when it's time to replace them, you can take them apart and reuse the parts. Now, there's a phone in England, I'm trying to remember the name of it, Fast Phone? That isn't it. That is designed just that way. Your camera's out of date, okay. It was 4 years old and there are better cameras. I unplug the camera from the phone and I plug a new one in. And software, well, that's easy to upgrade all the time. One limit is as we do more and more powerful software, the CPU, the computer chip inside may not be able to keep up. Why can't we replace it, pull it out and put a new one in? There are ways of designing so that you can keep it going for a very long time. And moreover, the monthly upgrades that we get and so on, which are so annoying, because they always happen when you least can afford the time. Why are they there? One of them is because of sloppy programming that causes it easy for people to break in. The other one is because, oh, we have a new feature we want to introduce you. Well, we should get rid of the damn feature stuff. Most of those features simply make it harder to use. Very few people use the new features. It's a disease that I once labeled as featureitis. And it's all that because of the selling cycle. If we have to sell a new phone every year, we have to show you that it's new and something's different. The automobile industry pioneered this. It used to be that every year there'd be a new release of the car, right? And slight minor changes. And every 4 or 5 years there'd be some big major change. Not because it was necessary, but because they wanted you to buy a new car and they wanted you to signal that you were driving an old car. Ooh, shame on you. So the main thing we have to change is the attitude. It doesn't require any new skills or design. It requires a change of attitude.
Question over here, Don.
Hello. Do you hear me all right? I think my question is more like a bent and not a question, or a frustration I have that I would like to share with you and get your opinion on it, because I'm extremely grateful that people like you point us in the direction, how can we do to change the world for a better place? And I've been, reading about ethics, trying to learn about climate change, informing myself because I am aware of my privilege and power as a designer, but I always end up extremely frustrated because I feel maybe it's not only design. As a designer, I feel very powerless sometimes, that I'm not the decision maker at the end of the day. And of course, I raise the risks that I see, and I try to ask questions and stay up to date. But I always end up wondering, is it really only design? Do we need something else? And it's kind of an everyday frustration that I have as a designer, to really wanting to make a change and end up reading a ton of books, watching YouTube talks and coming here to see you, and I agree completely to everything you say, but I wonder how much can I challenge the digital economy, right? Or how much can I, and I'm really, really trying, and I really feel frustrated because at the end of the day, I feel maybe I'm doing something wrong, or maybe I should keep on studying more. Maybe I should quit design and study policy making, you know, and go to politics, because I feel it needs to be a collective effort, and sometimes I really struggle to feel that that we are all aligned in terms of making this change happen, and how much this change is important for the different businesses that I've been working for. So I wonder, what do you think about this? And if you have some answers. I haven't read your last book, but if you have reflected about this, because sometimes I feel, yeah, we are talking about all the responsibility we have, but we can't do this alone, right? Like we need to do this as a team, and everyone needs to be aligned on changing the world. Thank you.
Yes, the applause is earned. You are asking the right question. So what is it that you can do? And I think I would like it if everybody asked themselves that question. What is it that you can do? Because you're just one person, and your voice is a minor voice. So there are two different things that I feel the design profession can do, and I'll tell you something I'm trying to do. So the design profession, first of all, has to rise up in people's perception that this is a valuable discipline. We have tools and ways of thinking that no other discipline has. Yes, there are other disciplines that build things, and there are other disciplines that do large projects, but they do not focus upon the needs of people. And that's what we do. And our way of thinking, of approaching a problem, is pretty unique, because engineers and business people are very good at solving problems. They're taught how to solve problems. But they almost never step back and ask, is this the right problem? And what we teach is you have to ask always, is this the right problem? What is the core issue we should be solving? That is not understood by most people. So one thing we have to do is, well, how do you convince people? You don't do it by coming to conferences like this. Why? Because I'm talking to people who already believe, who already understand this and probably agree with what I'm saying. You have to go to conferences where people have never heard about us or may not agree with what we're saying. We have to go to conferences of politicians and of business people. So not everybody, but a few leading spokespeople in the field of design or related areas ought to be doing that. Second, as I've already stated, we have to get more designers in positions of power. And you do that by understanding the company or the corporation or the country you're in, and you have to know exactly what are the important issues for those people. If you want to understand, if you want to move up in a company, well, one of the lessons we teach you is when you design something, understand how your customers think and behave. Who are your customers? Are they the people who use the devices you build? Yes. But your major customer is the people you work for. You have to make sure they understand what you're doing, which means you have to understand them and understand their language. Their language is spreadsheets. When I got on my first board of directors of a company, I said, oh, wonderful, I can now help you make better products or do this or that and the other. That's not what board of directors meetings are about. Most of the time in board of directors meetings, you're looking at spreadsheets and the finances. And you're looking a little bit about sales patterns and new sales methods and hiring a new sales manager or new representatives to sell your stuff. That's what these meetings are all about. And you say, well, I'm a designer. I'm not interested in that. Well, you have to be if you want to change what designers do, because we do have a different perspective. And even when looking at the financial sheets, we look at it differently than someone trained in accounting looks at it, because we look at the implications on the people who are working in the company, the environment where the company is located, and the people who are using the products the company makes. And we have to bring that to the boardroom. And we can, because the boardroom will listen if you talk their language. And if you show them how doing things that are better for everybody is actually good business. And there are many companies that have done this already. My favorite example, which is an American company that makes sporting goods, Patagonia, some of you may know of them. They switched from, we have several different kinds of corporations. There's an S Corp and a C Corp, et cetera. But there's a new one called a B Corp, where B means basically better. We are thinking about how to make things better in the world, better for our employees, better for everyone. And so Patagonia is a B Corp. And so it's written into their bylaws that they are not interested in increasing the profits to the shareholders. That's important because it keeps them going, but that's not the major point. The major point is to make a better world. And if they make clothing, and if the clothing rips, you can send it back, and they'll repair it and send it back to you. And if it has gone beyond repairing, you send it back, and they use the components to make new clothing. And do they charge a little bit more for this? Yes. Are they very successful? Extremely successful. Many of you may make coffee using an espresso coffee maker. Well, those are little pods, and that pod is completely recyclable. I don't know how it works here, but in the United States, when I buy pods, I can get a free bag, and it's a mailing bag. And when I use up, say, 200 pods, I put them all into the mailing bag, and they give me instructions on how to print out a mailing label, and it gets sent back to them. I don't have to pay anything. It's free to send it back. And the pods are made out of aluminum. Aluminum is the easiest metal to reuse, melt, and make new pods out of it. And then the used coffee, which is inside the pod, is fertilizer, or also when compressed and dried, it's good building material. So again, they've learned how to redo things. And other companies too, I can give examples. So that's what we have to learn how to do. And the last thing we have to learn how to do is to band together. The United Nations has a list of 17 societal development goals. They actually have only 16 goals, because they talk about crises in education, healthcare, etc. The 17th goal is we must all band together in order to have a stronger voice in doing this. And that's what I'm urging to you. We must all band together. And what am I doing? I got a prize recently, a big design prize. It didn't change anything I did. It's too late. Yeah, it's nice to get prizes, but it makes no difference in my life. When do you want a prize? When you're starting out. And so I decided to use the money for the prize, plus money from my friends, to cause a new design award program. They call it the Don Norman Design Award. And that is for a group of young, early career professionals who are doing something along the 16 societal development goals of the United Nations to help societies, to help communities. And they have to actually have implemented it, and they've tested it, and they have enough evidence to show that they have great promise. Now, they'll be young, they won't have any money, much money, and so they won't be able to do very much, but they should have done enough that I can tell that they are making progress. I just realized I've only been talking there, so I've got to talk to you too. And so that's what I want to do, is give this to early career people. We're about to announce it, I hope, in the early November. The first prizes will be given out in November 2024 in the World Design Capital. San Diego and Tijuana, Mexico are the World Design Capitals for 2024. So there's already a good conference to give this out in. But I want to change these people, you, who get together to try to do something good for the world, not by doing something for other people, but by working with other people to make their lives better. So anyway, Another great long answer, but that was a great question. What can you do? Come on, you're designers. You're supposed to be creative. You can think of things that you can do.
Okay, so following up on that, what we can do, I have a question for you. It's a twofold question. The first one is more personal, and the second one is more fitting with what you're talking about now. The first question is, how have you personally used AI? The second question is, how do you think AI will help with the struggles that you're talking about now?
You have to be careful about the words AI. First of all, it's a field that's been in existence, I don't know, 50 years. Herb Simon, the one I told you about, he helped invent the field in the 1960s. And a lot of wonderful things have come out of AI, except AI is this weird field that before it accomplishes anything, people say, yeah, you people are just playing and you're not doing anything worthwhile. And after they're successful at something, people say, oh, it's just another computer program. So you're probably unaware of all the wonderful things that have resulted from AI. If you use a modern calculator that can solve algebraic equations and even calculus, differential equations, that's AI. That's where it came from. And if you take a picture with your cell phone, and it's a really great picture, that's AI. And those little those little rectangles that go around people's faces when you take a picture, that's AI. You know, when the cell phone first came out, I said, there is no way you can get a good picture out of a cell phone. And I said, this is based on the laws of physics, because the lens is so small, it doesn't accept much light, and the receptor is so small that every pixel is lucky if it gets 1 photon of light. 1 photon, that's the minimum amount of light that's possible. And yet we have great pictures. That's because of AI processing, which actually looks at the whole picture and manages to put things together in a really great way. But also, one trick is that, for example, it takes 10 pictures really fast. Well, if you take 10 pictures really fast, that's like having an area that's 10 times larger. And it does all sorts of wonderful things to make it a better photo. So yeah, the new stuff, neural networks and the ChatGPT, are powerful, but you have to realize its limitations. It's a pattern recognizer. It simply recognizes patterns and tries to find similarities in whatever it's being asked to do with anything it's read about in the past, and it's probably read everything. So it does really produce wonderful, coherent text, but it has no understanding, which is why it does some of the nonsensical things it does. But it's going to be very powerful. It's going to revolutionize our lives, because it can be used in the future for things that we're not even aware of today. Here's a trivial one. Instruction manuals. Don't you love reading instruction manuals? Basically, almost nobody ever reads an instruction manual. In any company, there's usually at least one nerd who reads the instruction manuals. And when you need to know anything, you go to that one person and say, how do I do this? Well, GPT is that one person. Because instead of writing instruction manuals where you describe every little feature and every little thing that it does, which is not very helpful in trying to know how to solve a problem, it will read those. So you can write a different instruction manual, which is really a table of everything. And then when you ask a question, it will put together an answer. I just bought a new car, a new electric vehicle, and it's quite automatic, and it has a 400-page instruction manual. It's crazy. If I want to know how to do something, I can't even find it in the manual. I'm sure it's in there somewhere, but why can't I ask Chat? How do I make the sensitivity of the automatic, lights be different? And I'm sure it will tell me. So because I also think that's a conversation, and I think conversational interfaces are the future. Instead of having menus, instead of having gestures, instead of having specific commands, we will simply have a conversation. And any of you who have tried to explain to an assistant or a friend how to do something for you, and having it come out wrong, you realize that conversation is not necessarily easier, but it is more natural. Because when it doesn't come out the way you like, you can explain why not. And after a while, it does come out the way you like. And after a while, the system even learns what you mean by what you're saying. So that's when you change everything. And it will change our lives too, because a lot of stuff that you people are very good at will disappear because the machine will do it. And that should make your life more powerful, because a lot of the stuff we're good at is fairly routine stuff that we do over and over and over again. And instead, we can now back up and be designers, critiquing it, deciding what should be done in the first place, deciding if this is the right approach, looking at the examples it's producing and saying, yeah, do more like that, or no, don't do any like that. And coaching, learning. So I think AI is going to be very powerful, will change our lives, but ChatGPT has been out how long? A couple months. It's going to take a couple of years before we understand it, before it gets refined, before it's tuned, before a lot of the problems it has today are eliminated. So give it time. But I urge all of you to learn how to use it and to be experimenting with it yourself, because it will change your life. And now another but. It's digital, right? So those of you in the digital world will wonder, well, okay, the people who manufacture things, they're destroying the earth, but I do digital stuff. I'm not destroying the earth. Yes, you are. Digital stuff is not something that it runs on a device, right? And what kind of power does the device use? Well, electrical power. And the device, how was it manufactured and how was it made, first of all? And second of all, where does the electricity come from? And you know how much electricity it takes to train one of these GPT modules? It takes enough to power a medium-sized city, just to do the one training. And when we use it, even when we use it, so it's already been trained, we're simply asking a question, that uses a huge amount of energy. The server farms of the world already use a lot of energy, and now that we're adding these neural networks, complex, large, huge neural networks, that's eating up even more energy. So we have to solve that problem. We have to either devise better ways of getting the energy, sun, solar, wind, or change the way the models work. Because there's another model. The GPT, in theory, is a neural network, which means it's copying somewhat the way the brain works. You know how much power the brain uses? This? About 14 watts. Much less than my cell phone. There's a lot to learn to make things more efficient.
Yes, hi. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude for your taking time to being here today, speaking to us, and also for all your contributions in the user experience field. I think one of the others here mentioned it earlier about awareness. And I think it's all about awareness. When you're looking in and not out, you're able to see others around you. And when you're seeing others around you, you'll be better at taking in consideration what their needs are, what they need, you hear them, these kind of things. And I think it's all about the small changes. And there's a quote that says, what you appreciate, appreciates. It was just a comment. Thank you.
It's a nice comment. There are difficulties, however. When I say that we should build things for a community and listen to the community, that's really easy to say, and very easy to people to say, yes, we should be doing that. But when you go to the community, it turns out that everybody has a different opinion. And it's very hard to get the community together to agree, because almost anything that we tend to do to help, say, a community is going to help a large number of people and hurt a smaller number of people. And so that community is not going to be uniform. And they're going to have different opinions, too, about what should be done. And there's, a famous saying, which is NIMBY, not in my backyard. We need more solar and wind generated power, but it's usually generated at a place not where I live, so we have to bring the power to where I live, so we have to build more power lines. But okay, let's build the newer power lines, but not near my house, thank you. So that makes it difficult. And on top of that, when you do community work, you finally reach an agreement with the community, and now you have a second meeting to show what maybe the result is that the community is built. And guess what? Different people come to this new meeting, and you have to start all over again. So seeing other people is nice, except other people are a whole bunch of conflicting ideas and opinions and different value structures, and often different beliefs. And religious beliefs, yes, but even simpler. The belief that, different beliefs about what is harmful and what is good and what is bad. And a lot of them are false. But the world has lost confidence in science, in part during the COVID era, because scientists kept changing their minds, which is what science is supposed to do. When you get new evidence in science, you change your mind, and that's what happened throughout COVID. But people said, well, I can't trust the scientists. They tell us one thing one day and a different thing the other day. So you're right in principle, but in practice, it's much more difficult.
Go for it, buddy.
Yeah. Hello, Don. Thank you for bringing psychology into design. I think it's a good tool. Now, Protestantism was the system that brought us capitalism by making personal opulence taboo, and also linking values to success. So my question is, for now that we need kind of a new world system of values that will kind of bring us to a new way of consumption, what do you think some good values could be? And also, what are some good touch points to communicate those values? Because we don't have the Protestant church to help us anymore.
Some do.
Yeah, some do.
Values is another important question, but of course it does vary from culture to culture. Here's one thing that's lacking in design. Almost every profession and every professional society has a code of ethics. I don't see any codes of ethics in design. And ethics and values are closely related. And they may even be the same thing. And we don't have that. And it's difficult because in the value, when you try to value the importance of things, there are often conflicts. And you have to be able to decide which is more important. And as I said, different cultures may have different opinions about what is valued and what is not. So, but I think the design societies of the world have an obligation to work hard to develop various codes of ethics that will actually guide us a bit more in what we are doing and make it easier for us to talk back to our employers by saying, look, this would violate this code of ethics. This would violate my values and an accepted set of values. That's lacking. And once again, I actually tried. We just did a project on the future of design education in which we deliberately had a section on values and ethics, and they gave up. It was too hard to ask of them in the short period, because it's a hard problem. By the way, I told you I'm neglecting that side, but I also notice all the questions come from this side. So why don't you go find people there?
Yeah, I agree, Don. Design is probably not yet a profession. But right now I want to ask you about 3 Mile Island, because I read a really entertaining conspiracy theory the other day about how big oil actually made the accident happen. And that makes me wonder, do we have room still, after COVID, for expertise in the modern world, where people prefer to latch on to some easy but wrong hypothesis instead of checking the facts. So what's the role of expertise going forward when we want to have a more participatory, community-oriented design process?
Oh, I think there are lots of good models in the world. I think we're actually far ahead of the past. We have many more detailed analyses of the world's issues and problems, and of technology's values and what technology can do, and the kind of harm technology can do than we ever had in the past. But we have to get away from the... I feel one of the major problems of the world is that the Western world, West is not a geographical term. West is a political term that means basically the developed nations of the world, the industrialized nations. The industrialized nations are pushing their economic value, an economic system, which is basically make a profit as fast and as good as you can. And short-term values over long-term values. And that's, I think, what's really hurting us. It's the lack of long-term thinking. And it's built into the economic systems that we have and the stock markets of the world and the way we measure the quality of a nation by gross domestic product and so on. That has to change. And in this book, I talk about a lot of the problems, but it's not just me, because I cite all sorts of very famous and distinguished people who make the same issues, discuss the same issues. And I discuss in every case, I try to give a solution, not just the problem. And there are lots of good solutions that I present. They're simply not being followed. So I think that the knowledge already exists. There are lots of good people, lots of good works, lots of non-governmental NGOs, organizations, non-government organizations, and foundations, and countries, for that matter. They're doing really good work. But it hasn't spread, and I think it's not spread because of the way that capitalism has been implemented. I'm not opposed to capitalism. Adam Smith, who sort of invented it, understood these issues and understood the harm that could happen, and the harm has happened. It's simply that we have rewarded the rich and degraded the rest. There's a wonderful book and set of concepts in psychology. The book is called Weird. Weird means peculiar, right? So spelled W-E-I-R-D. What has been pointed out is that almost all of our knowledge of economics, of behavior, of ethics, of psychology, comes from the study of weird people. Weird means W-E-I-R-D, white, educated, industrialized, rich nations, democratic nations. That's about 2 or 3% of the world. We're neglecting the rest of the world. Everything that we think about is biased. The reason that I can come and talk to you is because I'm one of those weird people from a weird country, and so is Norway. But that excludes a huge amount of the world.
And with that, Don, we have finished. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation. It was a lot of great questions, so I didn't have to be nervous at all. So thank you very much, Don Norman.
Don Norman, everyone!
Thank you. Thank you.